The sunlight spilled through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns across Evelyn Cole's tidy living room. She had been up since dawn, ironing her navy blue gown for the wedding. The fabric shimmered faintly when it caught the light, elegant but modest, just like her. Evelyn had spent the last few months quietly preparing. She didn't like to fuss or brag, but inside, she had been bursting with excitement. Her only daughter, Julia, was getting married. And even though the planning had been hectic, with all the arguments over flower colors, seating charts, and guest lists, Evelyn thought it was all worth it. She had been saving for years, setting aside a little from her pension each month. When Julia told her the venue she wanted, Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Don't worry about the deposit, darling," she'd said, pulling out her checkbook. She'd even offered to pay for the photographer because she wanted every moment of Julia's special day captured forever. In her mind, Evelyn imagined herself sitting in the front row during the ceremony, smiling through tears as she watched Julia walk down the aisle. She had already written a short speech for the reception. Heartfelt, but not too long, because she didn't want to bore anyone. It talked about Julia's first day at school, about how she'd always been a determined little girl, and about how proud she was to see her grow into such a confident woman. She thought everything was fine. She thought she was wanted there. That was until the knock came on her door that afternoon. Julia stood there, dressed casually in a pale sweater and jeans, but there was tension in her posture. Behind her, Matthew, her fiancé, lingered with his hands in his pockets. He gave a polite smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mom," Julia began, stepping inside. "Can we talk for a minute?" Evelyn smiled, brushing her hands on her apron. "Of course, dear. Is everything okay? You sound serious." Julia hesitated, glancing at Matthew before she spoke. "It's about the wedding." Evelyn felt a small flicker of worry, but she stayed calm. "What about it?" Julia shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her mother's eyes. "Matthew and we've been talking, and we think it might be better if you didn't come." For a moment, Evelyn thought she must have misheard. "Didn't come," she repeated softly, her voice almost trembling. Julia's shoulders stiffened. "It's just, you know how these events can be. There's a lot of Matthew's family coming, and they're very particular. We just don't want anything awkward." Evelyn felt the words land like stones in her chest. "Awkward? Julia, Matthew stepped in smoothly. "Mrs. Cole, it's nothing personal. We just think it'll be less stressful for everyone if you sit this one out. That way, there won't be any misunderstandings." Evelyn stared at them, her fingers curling slightly into the fabric of her apron. She wasn't loud and she didn't argue. She had learned a long time ago that sometimes silence speaks louder than raised voices. "So," she said slowly, "you don't want me at your wedding?" Julia's voice dropped, as if she wanted the conversation to end quickly. "It's not that we don't want you, we just think it's for the best. You can see the pictures afterward." Evelyn swallowed hard. For a split second, she felt something sharp and cold run through her. Not just sadness, but a deep, stinging humiliation. She looked at her daughter, her little girl, the one she had carried, fed, clothed, and comforted through every scraped knee and broken heart, and realized she was being pushed aside like a distant acquaintance. Her mind flashed to all the late nights she'd stayed up sewing costumes for school plays, all the mornings she'd woken up early to pack lunches, all the birthdays she'd made special even when money was tight. She thought about how she'd sold her late mother's jewelry just to help Julia pay for her college books. And now, she wasn't good enough to sit in the audience on the most important day of her daughter's life. But Evelyn didn't let her voice shake. She smiled faintly, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and said, "Of course, dear. I understand. If that's what you want." Julia's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if she was relieved Evelyn hadn't argued. "Thank you, Mom. It's just easier this way." Matthew gave another polite smile. "We'll make sure to send you the best photos." Evelyn nodded. "I'm sure you will." They chatted for another minute about nothing important. Then Julia and Matthew left, the front door clicking softly shut behind them. Evelyn stood in the quiet living room for a long moment, staring at the closed door. Her hands were cold, though the room was warm. Finally, she walked to her bedroom, opened the closet, and gently hung her navy blue gown back up. She smoothed the fabric with her hands, her fingers lingering for a second longer than necessary. She sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the silence pressing down on her. Outside, the neighborhood was alive. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking in the distance, someone mowing their lawn. But inside, Evelyn felt like the air had thickened, like she was breathing through glass. She picked up the small notebook on her bedside table, the one where she'd written her speech, and slowly tore the pages out. The paper made a soft ripping sound. She didn't cry. She just placed the torn pages in the wastebasket. In that quiet moment, Evelyn made a decision she didn't say out loud. Not to Julia, not to Matthew, not even to herself. But it was there, solid and heavy in her heart. If her presence was so unwanted, she would give them exactly what they wanted. And she would make sure they remembered it. The morning of the wedding came in quietly, like any other Saturday. A soft breeze moved the lace curtains. The kettle clicked off with a small sound. Evelyn stood at the counter, holding a mug she did not drink from. The navy blue gown hung in the hallway, covered with a clear plastic bag, shining softly as if it still believed it had a place to be. She turned the radio on for company, then turned it off again when cheerful music filled the room. She did not want cheerful music. She wanted stillness. She wanted to make it through the next 12 hours without breaking. She scrambled 2 eggs she did not taste, and cut a slice of toast she did not eat. She wiped the counter even though it was already clean. Every small task was a way to keep her hands busy, to stop her mind from drifting to the church, the aisle, the vows, things she should have seen, words she should have heard. At 9, her neighbor, Mrs. Carter, tapped on the door. She was carrying a small gift in silver paper. "Are you ready for the big day?" she asked, smiling. Evelyn held the smile steady. "Plans changed," she said simply. Mrs. Carter's smile faltered. "Oh, long story," Evelyn said. "They wanted something smaller. Family only." Mrs. Carter's eyes softened. She was old enough to hear what was not being said. "If you need anything," she murmured, "I'm right next door. I can sit with you a while." "Thank you," Evelyn said, "but I'll be fine." After the door closed, Evelyn leaned her palms on the kitchen table and breathed slowly. She counted to 10 and then to 20. The clock ticked. The house made its usual sounds, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the water heater clicking on and off, as if nothing unusual was happening anywhere. At 11, she took the gown from the hallway and carried it back to her bedroom. She laid it across the bed. "You were perfect," she whispered, smoothing a crease that wasn't there. She folded it gently into its garment bag and slid it into the closet, not with anger but with care, like placing away a photograph. By noon, she made a pot of soup. The recipe was one Julia had loved as a child. Chicken, carrots cut small, noodles soft enough to eat when you were sick. The smell filled the house and made the memories come faster. A small girl in a pink sweater, legs swinging from the chair, spoon clinking against the bowl. "More," little Julia had always said. "Always more." Evelyn set a bowl on the table, sat down, and stared at it until it went cold. At 1:30, she opened her laptop. She did not go to the wedding live stream link that a distant cousin had posted. She clicked her email instead. There were messages from the florist about final invoices, a note from the caterer asking to confirm the delivery time, and 2 messages from the venue manager about the damaged deposit. Each message had her name on it. Each line reminded her that she had helped build the day she was not allowed to see. She closed the emails and opened a folder on the desktop labeled House. Inside were documents she had kept tidy for years: property tax receipts, mortgage statements, insurance renewals. She had not planned to look at them today, but there was a stubborn calm inside her now, a line she recognized from hundreds of novels she had taught. When a person understands that something is finished, they stop holding on and start putting things in order. She sorted the papers by date. She checked the mortgage balance. She made a note of the interest rate, the renewal date, the property tax schedule, the insurance policy number, the utility accounts. She listed out the payments on a yellow pad, line by line. The numbers were not a threat to her. They were just facts. Facts could be moved, signed, reassigned. At 2:15, her phone lit up with a photo from a mutual friend. Julia in her dress, lace across her shoulders, hair pinned with pearls. She looked beautiful and older at the same time. Matthew stood beside her in a dark suit, chin up, proud. Behind them, Matthew's mother and father smiled, and his sisters stood in pale gowns, all thin and careful like glass. The caption had 4 heart emojis and the words, "Perfect day." Evelyn stared at the photo a long time. She did not cry. She whispered, "You are still my girl," and placed the phone face down. At 3, she washed the soup pot. At 3:15, she wiped the stove. At 3:30, she folded a dish towel that did not need folding. At 3:45, she took out the box on the top shelf of the hall closet. the one that held Julia's baby bracelet, a lock of hair from her first haircut, kindergarten drawings, a crayon sun, a purple house, stick figures labeled me and Mom. She put the box on the floor and sat beside it. She took every paper out and laid them around her like a ring. She smiled at some. She touched others and felt the same ache she had felt when she first tore up the speech. At 4:30, she put everything back into the box, tied the string, and wrote on the lid in neat letters. For Julia, whenever she is ready. She placed the box under the bed. At 5, the light outside turned warm and gold. Evelyn went for a walk around the block. A boy rode a scooter past her and waved. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere, a woman laughed. The world did not know that a mother had been told to stay home from her daughter's wedding. The world did not know that kindness and cruelty can live in the same house, one room apart. When she came back, she made tea and watched the steam curl up in thin white ribbons. She could picture the reception by now. The speeches, the glasses raised, the first dance, the song Julia had chosen months ago and played on repeat in the car. She imagined the cake being cut and a smear of frosting on someone's nose and everyone laughing. She imagined the moment where the photographer might ask the bride to pose with her mother, and how there would be a small silence, a reshuffling, a joke to cover it. Oh, she couldn't make it, someone would say, as if it were a scheduling conflict, nothing more. At 6:30, she changed into soft pants and a sweater. She pulled her hair back with a plain clip. The house had settled into evening. She turned on one lamp, then another, and the rooms glowed the way they did in winter when you come home and the light is already waiting. At 7, her phone buzzed again, a short video this time. The angle was from a table in the hall. Julia and Matthew were spinning slowly on the dance floor, her dress a white circle. The crowd clapped. Someone's voice, Matthew's mother, maybe said, "Perfect, perfect," like a spell. Evelyn watched for 3 seconds and closed it. She did not need more. She took a notebook and wrote a list. Call Mr. Lawson, lawyer, Monday morning. Ask about transferring title. Confirm mortgage terms and whether assumption is allowed. Cancel autopay from pension account. Update will. Choose donation recipient. Pack one suitcase, only what I need. Leave house keys and letter on kitchen table. Call landlord about the small apartment near the harbor, number and address book. Turn phone to silent. She looked at the list and exhaled, long and slow. It looked practical. It looked like a shopping list. It did not look like revenge, and that mattered to her. She did not want to hurt anyone. She wanted to stop being hurt. At 7:30, she opened another folder on her laptop labeled scholarships. Years ago, one of her students, a shy girl named Mara, had won an award that changed her life. Evelyn had kept the brochure because it made her happy. She searched the foundation's name and read the donation page twice. For young women with potential and limited means, it said. She pressed her fingers to the words and nodded to herself, as if a stranger in another room had asked her a question, and she had answered yes. She drafted an email to the foundation, asking about setting up a named scholarship in a quiet way. No ceremony, no photo on a wall, just tuition paid and a letter to the student that said, "Someone believes in you." She wrote, "Please keep my involvement private." She signed her name and saved the draft. She checked the time. 8:10. She pictured the bouquet toss, the scramble of hands, the laughter. She imagined Julia looking happy and tired, leaning on Matthew's shoulder, whispering about the honeymoon flight in the morning. She opened her address book and found the number for a small apartment she had seen once on a weekend walk, a place near the coast where the buildings smelled of salt and old wood. The kind of place where you hear gulls at dawn and the rumble of waves under everything. She had told herself then, "Someday, I will live by the water." It had felt like a joke. Now it felt like a plan. She dialed the number. A man answered, voice warm, surprised to be called on a Saturday night. "Yes," he said. "The unit is still open. It's simple, but the view is good." He described a small balcony, a window that faced the sea, a kitchen big enough for one person to cook a proper meal. "You can come Monday," he said. "If you like it, we'll sign the papers." "Monday is perfect," she said. Her voice sounded steady in her own ears. At 8:30, she took out a thin, cream-colored card and a fountain pen that had been a gift from a student's parents long ago. She tested the nib on the edge of an envelope, then began to write on a clean page. She started with "Dear Julia," and stopped. She did not want to write with anger because she did not want the letter to feel like a knife. She wanted it to feel like a full stop at the end of a long sentence. She tried again. "Julia, I hope today was everything you wanted. I truly do. I will not write about pain. You know what you said to me. We both know what it meant. I am going to give you space. Real space. The house will be yours, with all that comes with it. My savings will go to girls who need a hand starting their lives. You have started yours. I trust you will build it well. If you ever wish to speak to me with respect, I will listen. Until then, I will be quiet. Mom. She read it 3 times, then carefully folded the paper and slid it into an envelope. She did not seal it yet. She placed it on the table and put a little white stone on top, a stone she had picked up 10 summers ago on a beach with Julia. It fit the center of her palm like it had grown there. At 9, she stood at the sink and washed her hands, though they were clean. She looked at her reflection in the dark window pane. Her face was calm. The calm looked strange and right at the same time. She walked to the closet and took out a small navy suitcase. She placed it on the bed and opened it. The sound of the zipper was clear and simple. She placed in it 3 dresses, 2 pairs of pants for blouses, a cardigan, a raincoat, clean underthings, a pair of walking shoes, and the small tin of tea she loved. She added a book of poems and the framed photograph of her and Julia from the day Julia graduated from college. In the photo, they were both laughing, eyes closed, mouths open. She wrapped the frame in a scarf and tucked it between the clothes so the glass wouldn't crack. She left the suitcase open. She would add toiletries in the morning. She did not want to rush. She wanted every action to be slow and chosen. At 9:30, she called Mr. Lawson's office and left a message on the after-hours line. "It's Evelyn Cole," she said. "I'd like to meet Monday morning to discuss a property transfer and updates to my will. Please call me back with a time. Thank you." She ended the call and felt the plan settle in her chest like a key fitting into a lock. She made 1 more cup of tea and took it to the living room. She sat on the couch and leaned her head back. The lamp cast a soft circle of light on the ceiling. She thought of all the women she had known, mothers who gave and gave, grandmothers who kept families alive with quiet work, sisters who held hands under tables when news was bad. She thought, not for the first time, that love can be tiny and steady and still be strong. Her phone lit up one last time. Another photo, this one from the airport, Julia and Matthew holding boarding passes, smiling into the camera with the bold letters H&L on the screen behind them. The caption read, "Honeymoon begins." Evelyn stared at the image and then put the phone face down again. She turned off the lamp and sat in the dark for a few minutes, letting her eyes adjust. The house hummed. The night held. Somewhere far away, a plane climbed into the sky with 2 people inside who believed they had closed a door. At 10, she stood and stretched, rolled her shoulders, and checked the front door. She set her keys in the small ceramic dish by the entry, the one Julia had made in 2nd grade, lumpy and glazed in uneven blue, still perfect in its own way. She traced the rim with a fingertip and smiled. She went to bed and lay on her side, listening to the wind move through the trees. She did not replay the living room conversation anymore. She had listened to it enough. She counted her breaths. She pictured the sea she would soon hear at night. She pictured a library in a town where no one knew her yet, where she could volunteer for an hour after lunch and recommend books to strangers. She pictured making soup in a small kitchen and carrying the bowl to a small table and eating every spoonful because it was for her and only her. When sleep finally came, it came clean. No dreams she could remember. No sharp images. Just rest. She woke once in the dark and reached toward the nightstand for the notebook. In the dim light, she added 1 quiet line under her list. Be kind to yourself. Then she put the pen down and slept again until morning. By the time the sun returned, the wedding was over, the bouquet was wilted in a hotel trash bin, and the cake plates were stacked in a kitchen somewhere far from here. The house, her house, felt like a page ready for the line she would write next. The day ahead would not be loud. It did not need to be. Paperwork, a phone call, a suitcase zipped, a letter placed in the center of a scrubbed table. Small things that, when lined up, change a life. Outside, a delivery truck rattled past. In the distance, a train horn blew. Evelyn sat up, swung her feet to the floor, and stood. She smoothed the bed. She opened the blinds. She breathed in. The wedding day without her had passed. The day after would begin the same way many big stories begin, with quiet hands doing ordinary tasks that reveal, at last, who a person has decided to be. Ask ChatGPT. The day Julia and Matthew flew to Hawaii, the weather at home was unremarkable. Warm sun, soft breeze, a quiet Saturday. Evelyn stood at her kitchen sink, washing the breakfast cup she had just used. She didn't rush. Every movement was deliberate, as though she had all the time in the world. This was the day she had been waiting for. For a week, she had moved through her days calmly, as if nothing had changed. But in her mind, every step had been leading to this moment. With Julia and Matthew thousands of miles away, there would be no interruptions, no questions, no chance for them to stop her. She dried her hands and reached for the yellow notepad she kept tucked beside the fridge. The list she had written 2 weeks earlier stared back at her. 10 neat points, each one a step in the plan. Only a few remained unchecked. At precisely 10:15, a knock came at the door. Mr. Lawson, her lawyer of nearly 2 decades, stood on the porch. He was carrying a slim leather briefcase and wearing the same navy tie he always wore for serious matters. "Morning, Evelyn," he said, stepping inside. "I have everything we discussed." She offered him tea, which he declined, and the two of them sat at the kitchen table. He opened the briefcase and slid out a folder. "This," he said, "is the property transfer paperwork. As we discussed, it will legally place the house in Julia's name, effective immediately." Evelyn nodded. "And the mortgage?" "It transfers with the property," he said. "They'll be fully responsible for the payments starting the day they return." Evelyn's lips curved slightly, not in cruelty, but in a kind of final acceptance. They went through the documents line by line. Mr. Lawson double-checked that Evelyn understood every clause. She initialed each page with steady hands, signed where needed, and dated the final signature. He also brought the will changes. Evelyn had removed Julia as the sole heir to her savings and instead designated the full amount, every penny, to the scholarship fund she had chosen. "You're certain about this?" Mr. Lawson asked, his tone gentle. "I am," she replied without hesitation. "I raised my daughter to stand on her own feet. She has her husband now. My savings will go to girls who don't have anyone." Mr. Lawson studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll have this all processed by Monday morning." When he left, Evelyn stood at the door for a moment, the sunlight spilling across her living room floor. The air felt lighter. The house was quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway. Evelyn moved from room to room, taking only what she truly needed. A framed photo from Julia's graduation. A sweater that smelled faintly of the sea. A box of recipe cards written in her mother's hand. She left everything else in place, the furniture, the dishes, the curtains. So when Julia and Matthew returned, it would look as though Evelyn had simply stepped out for an errand. In her bedroom, she opened the closet and took down the small navy suitcase she had started packing earlier in the week. She folded her remaining clothes into neat stacks, tucking the photograph between them, wrapped in a scarf so the glass wouldn't break. From the bottom drawer of her dresser, she took a small velvet pouch. Inside were her wedding ring and the simple gold locket she had worn since Julia was born. She slipped the locket over her head and placed the ring inside the pouch. She would not leave those behind. Back in the kitchen, Evelyn sat at the table with a blank sheet of paper. She already knew exactly what she wanted to write. The words had been forming in her mind since the night Julia had told her not to come to the wedding. The pen moved across the paper slowly, deliberately. "Julia, I hope the wedding was everything you wanted. I truly do. I will not write about hurt. You know what you said to me, and we both know what it meant. I am giving you the space you seem to want. The house is yours now, with everything that comes with it. That includes the mortgage and the upkeep. My savings will go to girls who need help starting their lives. You have started yours. I trust you will manage it well. If you wish to speak to me one day with respect, I will listen. Until then, I will be quiet. Mom." She folded the letter and placed it in an envelope, sealing it with one press of her hand. She set it in the center of the table and placed the house keys on top. Evelyn wanted the moment they returned to be unforgettable. Not for cruelty, but so they would understand, finally, that actions had consequences. She set the table neatly for one, placing a plate, fork, knife, and glass as though someone had just stepped away. In the center, next to the letter and keys, she placed a thin folder containing the signed property transfer documents. On top of it all, she laid a small white stone, smooth and oval, that she and Julia had picked up on a beach when Julia was 8. A reminder of a simpler time, before distance and pride had built a wall between them. She wheeled the suitcase to the door, took one last look around the house, and smiled faintly. This had been her home for decades, but homes are not just walls and furniture. They are the people inside. And she was choosing to be inside a new one. She closed the door gently behind her and locked it for the last time. The key she used for that lock was the one now sitting on the kitchen table. Her taxi arrived promptly. The driver, a cheerful man in his 50s, loaded her suitcase into the trunk without asking questions. She gave him the address of the coastal town she'd always loved visiting. It was a long drive, but she didn't mind. As they left the city, Evelyn looked out at the passing fields, the shifting clouds. With every mile, the knot in her chest loosened. By late afternoon, they reached the coast. The scent of salt water filled the air. Gulls circled overhead, their cries sharp against the wind. The apartment was exactly as the landlord had described. Small, clean, with a balcony that looked out over the harbor. When the driver left, Evelyn stood alone in the quiet space, the sound of the waves filling the silence. She unpacked only the essentials. From her suitcase, she took the tea tin, boiled water on the small stove, and poured it into her favorite mug. She carried it to the balcony and sat down, watching the boats sway gently. For the first time in years, she felt no weight on her shoulders. She imagined Julia and Matthew returning from their honeymoon, walking into the kitchen, seeing the table set for one, the letter, the folder, the keys. She could picture Julia's hands trembling as she read, Matthew's jaw tightening as he realized the cost of the mortgage without Evelyn's steady income. She didn't want to picture the calls. She knew they would come. She had already decided she would not answer. As the sun slipped below the horizon, Evelyn leaned back in her chair and let the cool air brush her face. The waves rolled in and out, steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere far away, in a house she no longer called hers, the final piece of her plan waited quietly on a kitchen table. The goodbye had been written. All that was left was for them to read it. The late afternoon sun hung low when Julia and Matthew pulled into the driveway. The car engine ticked as it cooled, and the two of them, still wearing travel clothes and the faint tan of Hawaiian beaches, laughed at some private joke as they carried their luggage up to the front door. It had been a long flight, but their spirits were high. Their honeymoon had been everything they wanted: luxury hotels, endless meals, sunsets that seemed painted for them alone. Neither of them noticed that the blinds in the front windows were closed, or that the mailbox was unusually full. Matthew unlocked the door and pushed it open, expecting the familiar smell of home. Instead, the air inside felt still. Not cold, not warm, just unmoving. It was the kind of stillness that made you hesitate without knowing why. "Smells different," Matthew muttered, wheeling one of the suitcases inside. Julia frowned slightly, glancing toward the kitchen. She had expected to hear the faint hum of the TV or the clink of dishes from her mother's hands. But there was only silence. They moved toward the kitchen together. That was when Julia stopped. On the table, in the exact center, sat a neatly folded piece of paper in a cream-colored envelope. On top of it lay a single white stone, smooth, oval, familiar. Her breath caught. She knew this stone. She had been 8 years old, walking along the beach with her mother, when she had found it and insisted they each take one. Hers was long lost. Her mother had kept hers all these years. Beside the envelope were the house keys, glinting under the soft light. And just beneath them, a thin folder, its edges perfectly aligned with the table's wood grain. Matthew, sensing her hesitation, stepped forward and reached for the folder. The title page was the first thing he saw. The air seemed to shift. He flipped through the pages, scanning the clauses. His face paled. "Julia, this says the house is ours now." Julia blinked, still staring at the stone. "Ours? And so is the mortgage," he said, his voice tightening. "The whole thing. All the bills, the taxes, everything." Her hands trembled as she reached for the envelope, sliding the stone gently aside. She recognized her mother's handwriting instantly, each letter steady and deliberate. "Julia, I hope the wedding was everything you wanted. I truly do. I will not write about hurt. You know what you said to me, and we both know what it meant. I am giving you the space you seem to want. The house is yours now, with everything that comes with it. That includes the mortgage and the upkeep. My savings will go to girls who need help starting their lives. You have started yours. I trust you will manage it well. If you wish to speak to me one day with respect, I will listen. Until then, I will be quiet. Mom." Julia's eyes blurred. She left," she whispered. Matthew tossed the folder onto the table with more force than necessary. "Do you know how much is left on this mortgage? Do you know how much the taxes are every year? We can't afford this, Julia." Julia barely heard him. She was staring at the last line of the letter, the words "I will be quiet." They felt like a locked door. She pulled her phone from her bag and dialed her mother's number. It rang until voicemail picked up. She hung up and called again. And again. And again. By the 12th call, Matthew was pacing. By the 20th, Julia's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. By the 32nd, she was sobbing. By the 42nd, there was no sound in the house but the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft tap of her nails against the phone screen. No answer. That night, Julia wandered from room to room, half expecting to find her mother sitting in the armchair, reading, or in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. But the house felt different. It was as though her mother had taken more than just her belongings. She had taken the air, the warmth, the invisible thread that held the walls together. Matthew sat at the table, staring at the folder, his jaw tight. "We have to figure this out," he said. "We can't just let this place eat us alive financially." Julia didn't answer. She was still holding the white stone in her palm. Julia's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. Her mother stood on a small balcony overlooking the sea, wearing the same teal and gold blazer she had worn the last time Julia had seen her. A mug of tea rested in her hands. The sunset behind her painted the sky in warm gold and soft pink. The caption was just 4 words: "I am at peace." Julia read the message over and over. She thought of the wedding, of the empty seat where her mother should have been, of the moment she had told her not to come. She thought of how easy it had been to say those words, how quickly they had come out, as if they meant nothing. Now they meant everything. The mortgage payment was due. Matthew's salary covered only part of it. Julia had taken extra shifts at work, but the numbers never seemed to balance. The house, once a gift, now felt like a weight pressing down on both of them. One evening, Julia sat alone at the kitchen table, the letter unfolded in front of her. She traced the handwriting with her finger. She wondered if her mother had really meant it when she said she would listen if Julia spoke with respect. She picked up her phone and began to type. "Mom, I'm sorry." She stared at the words for a long time before deleting them. Instead, she set the phone down and picked up the stone, holding it tightly. She didn't know if her mother would ever answer. She didn't know if she deserved for her mother to answer. What she did know was that Evelyn had walked away with her dignity intact, and that was something Julia could no longer say for herself.